On to item K2, approval of resolution 23, 2013-14, authorizing the superintendent to sign a joint occupancy agreement, JOA, with the city of Emeryville. This will be a first reading.
Yes, the purpose of this item is for the board to review the resolution, a resolution authorizing the superintendent to sign the JOA with the city of Emeryville.
Mr. Traver?
Who's gonna take us through it?
In terms of what this means, we can have legal counsel. Mr. Traber, could you come up and give us a hand?
Come on, Mr. Traber.
Mr. Traber, maybe you can help make sure those present and watching on the video on the board all understand what the authorization means.
So there are two draft resolutions in your packet tonight. One for approval of the agreement with Turner Construction for construction of the ECCL project, and the other is for execution of the joint occupancy agreement with the city of Emeryville. We've talked about those two agreements for some time. There were some minor changes that were made by the district and Turner to the extent of necessary to fill in blanks as far as prices and deadlines for completion. There were some minor changes to language as well, clarifying in the Turner agreement that substantial completion is the deadline by which liquidated damages will be calculated. As to the joint occupancy agreement, there were a couple of clarifications in there regarding the city's responsibility for payment of an art fee and the school district's responsibility for payment of furniture, fixtures, and equipment. There were also some clarifications in there regarding the manner in which those items will be funded and attributed to each party respectively. If you all have any questions on the JOA, I'm happy to answer those.
Mr. Traber, if you could
Sure.
just help us, just with, before we go too far regarding the JOA itself and Turner contract, I just was hoping, could you just elaborate on the one action item the board is looking at for the moment before those two, which has to do with authorizing the superintendent to sign the joint occupancy agreement with the city of Emeryville?
So that action item is embodied in that resolution that's there in your packet. My understanding is that is not. My understanding is that we're not doing that this evening in terms of approving the joint occupancy agreement or the Turner agreement by approving those resolutions. What those resolutions will do is two things. They'll acknowledge that the district is ratifying those agreements, and they'll also authorize your superintendent or his designee to actually execute those agreements so that they can be carried out.
Thank you.
Board has any questions on that initial, that authorization document? That's very helpful.
No, I don't have any questions, but I will say I really feel this is a very strong and good document for this joint use project. It really kind of inspired the vision that the city and the school district had when we first developed, this whole project. I look forward to the collaboration of this project, and I want to just kind of congratulate and thank both legal teams of the city and the school district for working hard on this document and making it come to fruition. On the other hand, I still think it's a living and breathing document as we continue to proceed in the construction, as we continue to proceed in building up programs between the two agencies. I think, there's always a time that we probably should come back and, you know, look at this document and see how are we living and breathing this document. And I think it also would be a good idea to come back to this document before the actual facility is built, is complete, is completed, and, you know, really go over it again and see if we need to make any revisions or adjustment based on some of the collaboration of partnerships that we may implement and develop and before the facility is actually built. So I think it's a good document, but again, I think it's a living and breathing document that we should probably revisit once every year or so.
So I'm just going to note that we're doing 2 and 3, which I didn't do before, joint occupancy agreement and with the City of Emeryville for ECCL project, first reading. So with the comments that Member Dwin just made, I also echo the hard work and the stick-to-itiveness that staff has on both sides have committed in terms of making something that was definitely nebulous and in theoretical into a very, very much legalese document. So, yeah, I'm learning. So I appreciate the effort and what's been presented to us as a first reading. And we're not strangers to this document. We've seen this a number of times. But I do think that the work is not complete. This document, once it is signed, is not it's not over. It's not put away. It is a working, living document, and we will be creating refinements, I'm certain, through the collaboration, as Member Dwin mentioned. So I do appreciate staff and the community for waiting and hoping, and definitely through the support of the bonds, as well as the parcel tax. I mean, it's been Emeryville voters who have largely been supportive of the direction that these projects and what we want for our students and families and community. So I think this is phenomenal to get to this point. Member Pats?
I like to keep things short, so I'm just going to give people a reading assignment. I think it's a very large document, and most people are going to skim through it, but I would like to draw their attention to the recitals section, item T. That's a nice section that really summarizes the vision of this project, and irrespective of the hereofs and the therefores, that gives you a nice summary of sort of the goal behind it, which tends to get lost in all the legal jargon. So I just want to do that, and that's my comment.
Good, great call out.
And then we have John Baker here tonight from Swinnerton, when the board pleases for some presentation and update on the project and construction plan.
Okay, great. So maybe we'll have that before, right before, or we can do public comment now and then go to that presentation, or after. Pleasure of the
Public comment on this.
So
JOA.
perhaps we'll do JOA public comment if there's any at this time from any members of the public. All right, so we'll then move on to, and this again is for a first reading for both of those 2 items, and we'll now move. So is the presentation related to the Turner contract, or? Okay, so we'll now move on to item K. We'll just couple them up. K4 and 5, approval of resolution authorizing superintendent to sign lease-leaseback agreement, as well as construction contract for the ECCL project.
Yes, the purpose of these, the first one is to have the board do a first reading to review the resolution authorizing the superintendent to sign a lease-leaseback agreement with Turner Construction, and the purpose of the second item, the construction contract for the ECCL project, is also a first reading to review the proposed contract with Turner Contract for the ECCL project under the terms and conditions as defined in the contract.
You were jumpy this evening. Okay. Okay.
That's what it is.
enjoyed my time off. I worked a week in between, but I did 2 weeks off, I tell you. Gotta tell you.
Good evening. So John Baker with Swinnerton Management Consulting. We're the district's owner's representative for the ECCL project. The purpose of this presentation is to go over some of the documentation that has been issued to the board regarding the recommendation to award the lease-leaseback agreement to Turner Construction. I realize this is the first reading tonight, but I think it's the more detailed presentation which will be followed up with the subsequent meeting. I first want to just do a quick update on the GMP bid process since we last gave a presentation on this. There have been sort of 3 bidding exercises. The first were preliminary bids based on the pre-DSA set of documents back in May. That's May 13th of this year. There was an update of the bids based on the DSA approved documents on July 14th, and then final bids based on Turner negotiations with subcontractors and also some other things which I'll talk about on July 18th. That week between July 14th and July 18th was particularly hectic, but I think the team that's here tonight and who's not here tonight did some good hard work on getting us to where we need to be. After the first bids of May 13th, we conducted a cost and scope confirmation exercise with stakeholders from the district and city. And this exercise was to review scope and cost to ensure the project was within budget. We had 3 stakeholders each from the district and city. We reviewed a number of items with Turner, DSK Architects, and Swinnerton. It was a consensus-based approach to look at a number of items and make some decisions to make sure that we were within budget. We had a preliminary meeting with this group on June 17th, and then a final meeting on July 15th to confirm the scope and cost so that we would make sure that we were on budget. And you'll see there's a list of these items here. I won't go into detail, but these are the list of the items that were, these indicate changes that the group decided to make to the project to make sure we were within budget. And that detail is in your packet also. In addition to these things, we also made some additions to the project budget, such as for the pool. That was also discussed at that meeting. But again, it was a good collaborative effort with city and district staff to look at project elements to make sure that we were within project budget. And those changes have now been incorporated into the lease-leaseback agreement. The next thing I want to talk about is what the GMP detail. And this is a Turner document. This is important because this is what is attached to their contract. It's the price, it's the guaranteed maximum price, and the detail of that. Again, this is the guaranteed maximum price of the lease-leaseback agreement is for the DSA-approved documents. They're based on those documents, and is a GMP for those documents. Now, there may be changes that happen subsequent to those documents. So if we decide to upgrade classrooms or add some things, those would be change orders that the district would approve. But that's what it's based on. What's good about this is that a previous plan was to enter into the GMP lease-leaseback agreement based on progress documents, which is not uncommon. But now we have much more certainty with the DSA-approved documents. It's not often that you actually have the opportunity to do this, and it really gives everyone much more certainty. It creates a higher level of risk management for the district and the city and for Turner, and so this is a good thing. You'll see also there's cost detail for each major trade, and the document I'm talking about is this one here. I'm not going to go through the detail here, but I'm just explaining to the board what this document is. It's cost detail for each major trade, or what's called CSI division. That's Construction Specifier Institute, which is kind of an industry standard nomenclature for the trades. I want to point out that during that period of between July 14th and 18th, we worked very hard with Turner, the Turner team, and we realized a reduction in the costs for general requirements and general conditions by about 9%. And that's significant savings to the district and the city. General requirements is the Turner's cost of trailers and utilities and copiers and telephones and things like that at the site. General conditions are the cost of their staff, their team, superintendent, project manager, project engineers, admins, et cetera. But we did some real good pencil sharpening, I think, but still have a high quality and the appropriate team and services to manage the construction of the project. Also, I want to really give thanks to Turner. They did some very hard work with their subcontractors. The total of the subcontractor bids during that 1 week period, they reduced more than $1 million in the cost of those subcontract bids, and really did some good work with those subs to both get some additional bids, which resulted in lower costs, and also some negotiating with their design build subcontractors, and that also really got us more to where we needed to be. The GMP detail also incorporates the scope confirmation from the June 17th and July 15th meetings, which I mentioned earlier, and includes the standard markups for insurance and fees. And that's what is on this page that shows all those items there. And then the total you'll see at the bottom is $58,616,014. The document also, your backup also includes a milestone schedule. This is really important because this is the contract milestone schedule. I want to point out what these dates are because these are the dates that we're managing too. There are 2 dates for each phase of the project. Substantial completion, which is noted here as SC, and final completion, or FC. I want to take a minute to describe what those are. Substantial completion is the time at which a portion of the project can be occupied for its intended use. What happens at that time is typically the owner's punch list will be produced. The architect will issue a notice of substantial completion. The building officials who have jurisdiction on the project will issue some sort of occupancy document. A temporary certificate of occupancy is common. And that means that that's when the district can actually take possession of the project. The way this works is there's an overlap of when the contractor has possession and the district has possession, and that overlap is between substantial and final completion. Final completion is when everything is done. The punch list has been picked up, the closeout documents are in, warranties, guarantees, all that sort of good stuff is in. So for the gym and pool, it is the summer of next year. For the high school, it's in the fall of next year, and the complete project will be in the spring of next year, of 2016. And so these are actually contract dates. The substantial completion dates have what are called liquidated damages tied to them, which means that if the dates are not met, there's a charge to the contractor per day. And that's the district's protection that the leaseback contractor will build the project on schedule. And this is a lot of detail here, I realize, but this is the milestone schedule. There's a preliminary schedule with several more pages which will be attached to the actual leaseback agreement. But this is where the documentation of those milestones, those scheduled milestones, is shown. I do want to speak to the agreement. The board and also City Council did a first reading back in June, I think it was, or early June, late May. I want to point out that the agreement is substantively the same as the first reading, much like the JOA is. We've had some minor revisions made for consistency of terminology and definitions. This is sort of T crossing and I dotting, if you will. We had some chained terms that need to make sure we were the same term consistency. This also, the primary change is the attachments and exhibits have been completed in regard to insurance, milestone schedule, all those sorts of attachments that in the first reading, you'll know there are a series of blank pages, attach this, attach that, and that's really the bulk of the change to the document. And importantly, it's been reviewed in great detail by both District Council and City's Council. So the attorneys have weighed in and with much fine-tuning back and forth have completed that document. That's a significant process that protects both the city and the district. I do want to talk about one document in particular which may raise some questions, and that's what's called GMP qualifications. And that's the document that looks like this with a lot of small print. This is something that I, in particular, in order to protect the district's interest, was very eager to make sure that this document was done in detail, produced by Turner in detail. This is clarifying anything that needed clarification. A lot of these items you'll see in that detail are subcontractor clarifications made at the time of their bid. Sort of type of, if it wasn't clear if a door frame was grouted or not, it would have that kind of thing in it. So a lot of the text actually comes from subcontractors. This is really quite detailed work that refers back to the specifications. I want to point out that it really is not in any way scope reduction or quality reduction. It's clarification. It includes things like items which are not included in Turner's contract, such as classroom furniture. We'll be purchasing that separate from the Turner contract, and it's in the overall project budget. It identifies district responsibilities for example, utility service. The district needs to sign up with AT&T and Comcast and for fiber service. That is not included in Turner's contract, so it has things such as that in there. It also includes some scope not shown in the DSA approved drawings. For example, Turner is proposing to reuse base rock on site, which is the most cost-effective way to use base rock. Base rock is the rock that goes below concrete slabs. So they've got quite a few of what I would call means and methods clarifications that aren't really shown in the documents, but say, here's what we'll be doing. And so that's important clarifications also. It has some added definitions. For example, we have some allowances, particularly in terms of those scope clarifications. It talks about those sorts of things. So there's a lot of detail here that hasn't been seen before, but what's important is that anything that's not clear in the DSA approved documents or the lease-leaseback agreement, it's mostly scope things, is in that document. And that protects the district and city and Turner and the team against anything that might be uncertain during construction. So it's very important that we don't have to have those discussions and debates as we move forward. But it really doesn't change the scope of work, it's just clarifying the scope of work. So I want to make sure that that's clear to everyone who reads that. And there's about, I think, 5 or 6 or 7 pages of that. So that's those are the contents of really the contents and attachments to the lease-leaseback agreement. I want to have a discussion on project budget, and this is very important because as your owner's representative, we would not be enthusiastic about recommending the award of the lease-leaseback agreement had we not done quite a bit of due diligence on the project budget. I think we've mentioned in some previous reports to the board that we would be doing this. We had our Swinnerton's financial control staff, which consists of Toby Fenn and Geraldine Silva, actually did an analysis of all project costs to date. That means they actually went through every cost that's been charged to the project back from its inception. I think we're going back 5 or 6 years to make sure that we had the right number for all those costs. And that was several file boxes we had to get out of storage, and it wasn't a financial audit, but I call it due diligence. But as far as our project management, we consider an audit where we go back and make sure that we look at every cost. So there's no hidden costs that existed or things that were charged that were uncertain. Also, it coincided, which is a good thing, with the closeout of fiscal year 13-14, so we're able to close out the project costs for that fiscal year. We also confirmed the funding source amounts, the MOUs, the bond costs, all of those costs, which are not as round figures as you've seen on previous project budgets. They're kind of down to the cent, but we confirmed all those. The other thing is that the document you'll see, I'll show in a minute, is a much more conventional format. It shows, and I can kind of transition to this, it shows columns for expenditures per fiscal year, as a column for total project budget, a column for total cost to date, and a column for cost to complete. It's a much more standardized format that we're used to looking to, and I think it's much clearer to the district in terms of what it shows. Before, the previous versions had cost to complete and cost to date in the same column, which is confusing to many, especially if any accountants would be looking at this. And so we've really revised this. So not only have we looked at every cost to date, we've confirmed costs per fiscal year, including the one that just ended. We've then we've analyzed the cost to complete based on a lot of discussion with both the city and the district, and then confirmed our total project budget. And so that's what that document shows us. The other thing is that, because we're at this juncture, we can look at the projections of cost to complete with much more certainty than we had before, because we really know we're in a much smaller time frame now. I want to point out there's a much more detailed tracking document and process. And what we do is on all of our K-12 programs, we use a commonly accepted state funding budget format, which is called a JCAF format. It's used for K-14 schools. And it has a lot of detail, but that's what we want. It does roll up into a summary, not unlike what I'm showing you here, but it shows every purchase order, cost to date, per fiscal year, all on out the line. What's good about using that format also is, should we get state funding for the project at some point, we've got that ready to go. So and that's why we actually do it, because most of our K-12 bond programs have both local bonds and they have other money like the FEMA money. They have a variety of funding sources that need to be tracked in addition to state money, so we use that format. So future reports will be a condensed version of that, but that detail will provide the board and also the city with that format also. And then finally, this is a document that everyone's seen before, I think, for over the history of the project. I updated it just because everyone's seen it. But we're at a big milestone right here. You'll see sort of August 1st, all the preliminary sort of work, which is in the upper left-hand corner, DTSC approval, DSA approval, contract negotiations, all that stuff. We're past that now. We're just about to complete the soils mitigation work. In fact, we're really pretty much done this week. We're about to approve the contract in GMP, the JOA. We're about to complete demolition. And you see in the lower right-hand corner really what's remaining. And that's the construction contract, procuring furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And you'll see the final, the milestones at the bottom right-hand corner, which I had shown earlier. But, we're going to be moving to a different, I think, scheduling report here where we're going to focus more on kind of construction and move in detail from this more broad project planning scope. But I just kind of want to show how far we've all come, especially in the last couple months as we move forward with the project.
Good job.
Wow, thank you, Mr. Baker. Any questions for Mr. Baker?
I just have a few, and I'm glad to see Turner is here as well, because maybe they can chime in on a few of these questions. But based on the value engineering reduction list, how have we compromised, or have we compromised any of our energy efficient, systems, or water, anything dealing with water conservation with the facilities, anything dealing with our HVAC systems in the facilities? Have we compromised any of those elements in the project based on the value engineering reduction list?
I think the main area where I would be concerned also is we set some targets, and so we set a target working with the design build subs of between, I think, about 1% and 5% savings per trade, depending on the trade, and that's to see if we can have, for example, we have, I think, 60 different types of light fixtures.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to have, if we go with 40 light fixtures, do we realize some savings, some economy of scale? We're going to be working as we start construction with the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire sprinkler subs to see if they can work collaboratively with the stakeholders, with facilities, and the AE team, see if it makes sense. Basically, those subcontractors have been working on the project, but they haven't had a discussion with us about, well, gosh, we've got this type of equipment specified, or this kind of duct work, or this kind of wiring, or whatever. We've done some of that, but the idea is to see if we can strategically look at ways of realizing cost savings. So we've set a target in that in those lists. Now, what's important though, and I want to point out that our stakeholder groups, that former board member Josh Simon's been really adamant about this one, about not making first cost savings that result in greater operational costs.
Right.
Or buying something that's going to wear out in 10 years versus 20 years. So we're going to be looking at that really importantly. You'll notice in the detail on that list, it talks about that, considering operational costs. Okay. So I don't think we're going to make decisions like that unless it really makes sense. An example of one which we did make was there was a solar water preheat system. That sounds great. It sounds like a sustainable feature, but it really isn't. Given the efficiency of the system, it had a 100-year payback at a large cost. And so we decided to take that out, and we saved about $90,000. So it's things like that. So we put some cost savings targets, but we'll work with the team, and we're only going to make those decisions if it really makes sense to make them.
Okay, great. That's good. The other thing, and this may be a Turner question, is that based on our community benefit agreement at this time, how are we doing with the percentage of subcontractors of local hires at this point in time?
You
You-
have to
you
come,
come to the mic.
sorry.
That's it.
It'll be longer. I can't capture it all.
So this is an estimate. As you know, since we don't have a contract, we can't offer contracts to any other contractors. But currently, we are tracking at slightly over 45% local business participation.
Okay.
That includes the local impact area, which includes 2 zip codes in Berkeley, Emeryville, and 2 zip codes in Oakland. So we're at 45%. We may do better than that, but we'll wait until we finalize our contracting. That number will change over the course of the project, depending on if there's added scope or reduced scope, but 45%.
Have we done anything with the green corridor going a little further outside the impact zone?
Yeah, that includes the green corridor.
Okay.
Because it's pretty, the local impact area is pretty restrictive, just those
Right.
essentially 5 zip codes.
Exactly.
So,
Okay.
all right.
All right, that's
great.
good.
That's a good percentage.
And then just, this is just a comment. I would really appreciate if next Tuesday when we make the presentation, that our full project team can be there. So that's our architects, our contractor, our, owner's rep, every representative, and from our district, every representative be there. Because we need to show up as a team, and we need to show up there, solidified. Okay? All right, thank you.
And just for clarification, you're referring to the city council meeting?
Yes.
Tuesday evening?
Tuesday. Yeah.
I've been showing for 5 years. I'm not-
That's right.
So if you could maybe go back to that schedule,
Mhm.
I wish my mother was watching. So I'll note that my mother, who has now sent maybe 3 people through Emery schools, keeps asking me, when's construction starting? And so I'm just really, I'm glad I can actually, I'm going to take that particular sheet home and show her when she can stop asking me.
Okay.
So when you see that helps a
Well,
lot.
and what's about this? This is actually now in a contract.
So, and
so,
that's just
That
amazing.
means that that's actually
Yeah.
that that by agreeing to those schedules, Turner puts themselves at some risk. They've got to. This is probably more important just about anything is making that schedule.
No, it's great, and I think as from a child who happens to be the board president, who she, so when are they going to start construction? I'm like, look, lady, we're working on it. We're working on it. So I appreciate this is something I can put on the refrigerator, and every time she asks me, this is where we're working with. So, but I really appreciate. I think. It's incredibly important to communicate once we get to this point, and once hopefully a successful start, that we have as many opportunities to communicate where we are with this project is going to be incredibly valuable for the folks that live around the area and in town in general. So I'm not sure what our plans are as it relates to communication, but just making things visible I think will be very valuable. And I think the signage that was provided helped tremendously, that they knew something was going to happen. I've gotten so many emails, Facebook messages about my school is gone and this is going up. And so it has helped quite a bit to be as, visible and communicative about this project as possible. And that doesn't stop just with the signing and approval of any of these documents. So I just would like to, encourage staff and all of us to be very clear about where we're going and where, when we initiate this, where we're going and where we're heading and what our timeline is. So thank you so much for, being present and provide this information. It's been a valuable document to review and definitely a, opportunity for celebration. So anything, Mr. Pence?
Good job.
All right. At this point, before you go, are there any public comments to these 2 documents, 4 and 5, if I'm counting right? I think I'm counting right. 4 and 5. Hello.
Good evening, President Dice, members of the board. So this ship has sailed. I know that. But I also won't apologize for saying this so late in the process because it's not something I haven't said before. In March of 2012, when I indicated I wouldn't seek reappointment to the Oversight Committee for the bond measure, the last thing I said was to be aware of, or more like beware of, the lease-leaseback structure. I happen to be a member of the board of the California League of Bond Oversight Committees. It's a nonpartisan group that tries to educate bond oversight committees and advocate for state legislation that will assist them. And I've been to numerous presentations about this structure of agreement, and I've learned a lot of things, and most of them trouble me. There's a law firm down in San Diego that's suing districts that pursue leasebacks. I've listened to his arguments, and they're very persuasive. Of course, there's lawyers on the other side who have the other argument, but this was put into the California statute as a way of financing projects when schools didn't have any other means of paying for new construction. This was at a time before bond measures for school constructions were structured the way they are now, and where we have the funds to pay, and instead, this structure of agreement gets used to circumvent the competitive bidding process and the public bidding process that enables us to ensure that there's not cronyism and favoritism and these kinds of public benefits that have been part of that process for decades. Certainly, that's not a perfect process either, but this is a sham lease, right? It's not like any other lease that you engage in, and the payments are sham payments because they don't correspond to any sort of normal lease payment. They correspond to how much construction got done. They're clearly construction payments, not lease payments. And so I think the board exposes itself to litigation, right? This guy down in San Diego, he wants a case in every appellate district, right? And it could be us. And it also furthers us down the path of not paying enough attention to what are we going to do with this site, Ralph Hawley, what are we going to do with the Anna Yates site, do we have a long-term plan for those public properties that you guys are trustees for, and it also puts us further on the path towards co-location, which you also know I disagree with. But at any rate, I just wanted to say one last time that I believe this is a mistake. Forms C, F, E, and G, and H, I think, are all about change orders. And so I'm glad to have that $58 million figure finally, but the very benefit of the lease-leaseback structure that we were promised, that it helps to reduce or eliminate change orders, I'll predict for you now, it's not going to happen. Thanks.
Any other public comment on this particular item?
May I just add one thing? I just wanted to say again, thank you to Mr. Baker and the team for being here tonight and all their work, and particularly for John Baker for things were it was such a crunch time, and it's difficult for everyone during summer that at one point he had to pull over on the side of the road somewhere in New York and conference call with me, and so we interrupted his vacation multiple times, and so I just wanted again to say thank you, John Baker and the entire team.
No, I agree. I mean, we've come so far within the past 6 months. I mean, I feel personally that we've come further in the past 6 months than we probably come within the past few years. So, I mean, this project team has done a wonderful job. I look forward to the great work, and I think everyone is a part of this project for the well-being of the children and the families in this district to erect a facility that will be for the whole community and a facility that the whole community can actually use. So I thank you all and continue to do what you're doing.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, let me also add thanks since he's here. Thank you for Mr. Traber for all of his assistance, because like Mr. Baker, Mr. Traber had to go back to work multiple nights last week and stayed up to about midnight talking to me on the phone a couple times, and so I again appreciate legal's help as well.
That whole midnight oil thing, huh?
Yeah, that's a lot of that.
Well, I echo everyone's comments, and I think we have this in front of us early next week, and I, for one, look forward to moving this along. And as I said, my mother is too, so just because of that pressure. Anything else? All right, so I believe the meeting is one more, please.
We need to authorize the superintendent to enter into the JOA.
It'll be on Monday.
Oh, I thought that was an action item this evening.
Oh, yeah, no, it'll be first reading. They're all first, we'll do it all on that same night.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No,
I thought the same
no.
for a second too.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Christian's,
so I'm right there
Christian's
with
on
you.
it. I'm all for Christians. All right, so we're gonna now adjourn the meeting.
Good job, gang.
Christian, I was thinking the same thing.
I thought we had to
Yeah.
get, no.
Hey, Millie, just